across my heart, our effects artist, Mike.
Genesee.
First question. You were a founder at the original Mythic, part of the old guard. So give us a feel for what that was like at the founding and how many people you were dealing with, the kind of vibe, that sort of thing.
Well, we started out with 6 people at the very beginning. It was an interesting experience. The company grew over the years from that 6 people up to something over 200, I believe, at the end. I don't remember the exact number, but we just kind of evolved over the years. It was very exciting.
So how did you get involved with that? Were you an effects artist to begin with?
No, actually. I was hired originally as just kind of a generic art guy. I just kind of fell into effects because we were working on a game which was called Mage Storm, which was about magic. So someone had to do it, and I can do that. And so I kind of did that, and then as the years evolved, I kind of became more of a specialist. And then I eventually just did it all the time.
Cool. So, tell me about your old school engines that you worked with.
Oh gosh. Our original engine was called Rays, and it was a ray casting engine. And you'd be familiar with those if you remember, of course, the classic Doom, Duke Nukem. Those games all used raycaster engines, which were kind of I wouldn't say primitive, sort of primitive version of 3D technology, where it simulated 3D-ness in a 2D pixelized way.
Okay. So you've probably evolved a lot as an effects artist since the old days, now that you have possibly more advanced engines and things like that. How has that been in creating, I guess, now creating your very own new stuff from blank slate?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Being able to do so much more and being able to have so much more capability over the years. You know, originally when I was working on that first game, I was using sprites to create everything. It was all, animated sprites and really primitive stuff. And then when we finally did our first 3D stuff, and I think it was in 1998, I got our first video cards, which actually did real 3D, and they were, a whole 2 megabytes. And it just rapidly bloomed from there. So,
how would you simplistically define an effects artist? Or not simplistically, if you feel like it.
That is a difficult question. I think an effects artist is someone who enhances a game, not only aesthetically, but in other ways. They add important information about what's going on in the game that can't be expressed through the models and the locations. So if a guy's on fire, you
would like to know.
You have to know that the guy is on fire and it's probably bad. So that's where that comes in. Effects are also used for much more subtle things. At least as far as I'm concerned, I was involved in other things which I consider effects, like skies, atmospheric kind of stuff, not your standard twinkles that you normally think of when you think of effects, magical kinds of things, although I did a lot of that as well, of course. But so there's that. It's just enhancing the believability of a game. A lot of things that you expect to be in the world are effects, and so they have to be there. So.
Elaborate on those abilities that are in the game, as far as, I guess, timing of things and how your effects are implemented in ways that don't cause the player to suddenly be jerked out of their immersion.
Well, that's a very important point, I think. I like to say that I think effects, especially in the kinds of games we're doing, can't really take center stage. When you're playing a game, the effect has to be something that you just naturally assume is there because it's part of your experience. As soon as a game becomes about I'm being punched in the face with this effect, I'm an effect, hey, here I am, then I think it becomes much less effective.
Is that about the timing of when it occurs, or is that about the actual visual aesthetic of it?
I do think timing is the most important thing in effects. I think having effects happen when the player thinks they should happen is the most crucial thing to making them feel fluid and believable. As soon as an effect happens or at the wrong time or feels a little jerky, it can even be off by as much as a frame or two of animation, and it can spoil the whole thing no matter how beautiful it is, because it looks stiff or stuttery or something is not quite right with it, and I think it can spoil it. So,
as you progress out of the really early stages of this game, what are you working on currently?
Right now, I am working on trying to think ahead about what issues will come up for effects that I will need to be doing in the near future. Just doing a lot of planning, making of lists. I've been talking with Ben recently now that we've got a full-time designer about what kinds of things his systems are going to be using or planning on using, and trying to incorporate that into my thinking about what we'll need for effects, and basically just trying to be as efficient as possible to get thinking ahead is basically it. That really boils it down, I think.
What did you learn from the 98% of effects that you did for Dark Age of Camelot?
Well, I'd like to think that I've learned a lot in the past 15, 16 years of doing effects for games, and again, I think it comes down a lot to not overwhelming players too much with the effects, not punching them in the face, as I said earlier, with this as an effect, especially in the kind of game we're making, where we are concentrating a lot on large-scale battles, large numbers of people doing things at one time, and so my current philosophy is that effects will need to be punchier, quicker, show what's happening as efficiently as possible, and then out of the way, so that your gameplay experience is not a giant light show at all times, because that's just distracting. You need to be able to see important things that are happening as you're playing, and no more, no less, that look attractive. So I think if I can achieve that, I think that'll be successful. But it's going to be difficult.
Yes.
I'm not kidding myself that this is
it's a tall
challenging.
order,
Yeah.
but I'm sure you'll achieve it.
I'll try.
Or Tyler will whip you with a stick.
That's true. Yeah, it's true. He is quite cruel.
As gamers, we've been trained with certain archetypes in mind when it comes to expected things, expected visuals. How will you balance what people are used to seeing with the idea of innovation and something new?
That's another very tall order. It's something I would really like to do, because I think a lot of visuals that we see in games, especially the RPG games, are kind of becoming cliches. But on the other hand, there are things that people expect and know, and so varying from that too much can be a little bit dangerous, because we want people to know what's going on, as I said, and so I can't come up with anything which is too crazy, but I would like to innovate and create a different style. I think a lot of effects that I've done in the past have, kind of fallen into a certain rut almost, I've kind of done a little bit of the cliche, and I would really like to be able to break out of that if I can.
Well, Mike, thank you for speaking with us, and hopefully we'll see some of your visual effects, perhaps now, but definitely later.